that's what you want to do, is we have to buy our life back. Most people, business owners, send their money on a one-way ticket away from them to tie it up for 20 years, 25 years. But you need to hold it because your best investment is your business. You finance everything you buy because you either use some other people's money. That's interest. Everybody understands that. But what they don't understand is that when you pay cash, you say, oh, I pay cash for my real estate. All right, well, you're giving up interest you could be earning. So you don't like paying interest, but you must not like earning interest.
Welcome to the Kaizen Blueprint, the podcast dedicated to helping you achieve a better life through continuous improvement. If you're ready to elevate your finances, grow your investments, and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. Each episode brings expert insights on personal development, finance, and real estate, giving you the tools to build lasting success. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Curtis May, how are you doing today, buddy?
Well, I'm doing great.
That's awesome. We were recording in Easter, and this is off the charts, and I'm glad to have you on here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're very knowledgeable, right? I know you're a financial educator. You're an advisor for over 35 years.
Over
35 years helping families and business owners achieve financial success and a work optional lifestyle. So tell us a little bit more about what you do. Specifically, how do you help other people?
So I really work in three ways, right? So when people find me, they're suffering from a couple of different things. Their cash flow is not flowing right. So I help people, and we give them a system of cash flow control called cash flow mapping, because most wealth is lost right there. A cash flow control, I don't care if you're making 50,000 or 500.
Sure.
You can spend 5, 10, right? So you got to spend less than you make. That's what we teach from our principles-based platform. Then we show them how to create a framework so they have the ability to make good financial decisions. Most people just kind of do stuff, but they don't have a filter to run them through. So I teach principles-based financial planning. And so we do a one-page financial plan called a personal financial snapshot. That's step one.
Sure.
Principles drive strategy. The strategy I'm known for is teaching people how to be the bank. It's called infinite banking. And then strategy, which is a process. It's not a product. And then strategy drives tactics. The tactics are the products that you buy. So, most people's goal, even if they don't articulate, because they really don't have a goal, they're just working.
Sure.
Even you want to run the real estate investors, right? They don't, how do you know when you won, right? And so it's kind of like goals, then principles, then strategies, then tactics. So I kind of help them identify their goals, then organize a game plan to get them from point A to point B.
So let's go back a little bit, right? Before we talk about infinite banking, we're going to talk about that in this entire episode anyway. Tell us your background. 35 years you've been in a business, right? And I understand that you grew up in a family of entrepreneurs.
I did.
And you started hustling as a very young age. Now, you mentioned about the goals thing. Was this is what you wanted to do back then?
No, I wanted to be a pro basketball player, of course.
Really?
And, maybe football first, and then I fell into basketball, and I decided I wanted to play college basketball. And
Okay.
I learned early on, I'm really focused, so I can be a monomaniac on a mission once I get into something, and then I want to figure out how it works, who's the best, how do you work out, how do you eat, and so that kind of obsessive thing has followed me into business. But my grandfather was in business, and as a black man in the 50s, he had contracts where we had 18, 20 people working for him.
Wow.
And then my dad he went to the Air Force, but he basically only worked with somebody in his 6 months out of his whole life, and we grew up in retail and this, little, right now in Philly, we'll call them the poppy stores. So we had the 1, then 2, then a little bit bigger store, and then we had a supermarket. And so I grew up, in that, going to my grandfather to the down in South Philly, where we're recording, down by the docks to pick up produce, and going to get meat with my mother at 5. So if y'all see Rocky, when he was punching the meat, I remember that. I was 5 years old. I was someplace with my mother, these people with these white coats on, with these big strips of beef hanging down.
Yeah.
And so I'd always been around that. And from the time I was 7, my dad told me, you're not making money, work with somebody else. So I never really got that go to school, get a good job. That was, not really in my thing. We employ other people. That's all I saw. And I realized that around my junior year in college, I mean, that the NBA was not looking for 5'11" shooting guards with a mediocre handle. So I was, all city honorable mention. I was a good ball player
Sure.
in Philly, but I wasn't,
Top flight
top.
national.
Yeah, no. But I learned to work hard, learn how to set goals. I learned the competitive nature. Like I've coached youth sports, and what I try to impress upon the kids, you got to have the will to prepare to win.
Mm.
Everybody wants to win, but you got to do the thing, and most people don't want to do that. So that's what sports taught me, and I was able to see what I was doing at an early age. I really got into the financial services business as a junior in college. Got my insurance license during basketball season.
Who
Couple
who,
years
who
later.
taught you that, the insurance thing? What came
So I
about?
started. Somebody it was really random. I was in Amway. Shout out Amway.
Amway, wow.
And so which got me into personal development, and then a person showed me a check for $400 and said, "This is what I made for an hour's worth of work."
Yeah.
And I said, "Doing what?" He showed me. I was like, "That's all you do?" And so I still had my basketball ego. So if this knucklehead could do it, I could do it.
Mm.
Take me to your leader. And so I went to a presentation that it doesn't exist. It does exist. It's just changed your name. But this was a company called A.L. Williams,
Mhm.
and you could start part time and do insurance and mutual funds. And I started there.
Yeah.
You know,
It's interesting how you came from a family of entrepreneurs and that kind of pushes you into doing that. Usually, at least for myself, becoming an entrepreneur comes from fear and comes from like a family of hardships and going through adversity, which perhaps your parents did too. Yeah, you had that too. I'm talking about like I come from like an immigrant background, and we started like the bottom of the bottom, and we saw our parents kind of struggle, and we want to be that rich dad from rich
Yeah.
dad, poor dad, and have that mindset. Whereas my parents, they were like, go to school, get a good education, and work for a company, a really good company for 40 years and retire.
Yeah, I blame most of my clients. Not most. Yeah, most people are taught that, and I kind of had rich dad. I had rich dad and poor dad because in the and because my mother was like, "Boy, you better get you a job." I don't know what your dad's talking about. So me now, fast forward, she never worked. Since I've to later in their marriage, she never worked a job. So
Really?
at home mom. So it's like, all right, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm gonna listen to dad. I'm sorry.
Did you feel as though growing up that you have to catch up to your dad or maybe do better than your dad?
No, but he was a good role model for me. So he was more an example, not that I had to outshine him. I think he was a great father. And so I have three daughters. So in raising children, he was the ideals. I
Mm.
thought to be a good husband, to be a provider, to be, you're supposed to handle stuff. So I had a good vision of that.
Yeah.
So I think it was more of an example than anything else.
Did your dad teach you like having a goal, having strategy, all that good stuff in terms of being an entrepreneur rather than just taking actions and just doing the work?
It was more caught than taught.
Mm.
And because when I got to college, I realized that I was a business major, right? So I thought you major in business to go into business,
Yeah, yeah.
and I could see the difference between the professors giving you, you could tell it was coming from a book. They hadn't lived it.
Sure. Yep.
Or I had a couple that made money that actually lived it, that weren't just teach me from a book, and I could just on a vibrational level tell the difference
Mm.
of who I gravitated towards. But it was more, no, I think I didn't know what it was. I was always kind of goal oriented because I would, so for example, in middle school, I think I read this book, and they'll have those book fairs, they'll fight
Yeah,
with Little Big Men, NBA.
yeah.
And I read something about George Gervin, for you young folks, is Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant.
He was
Okay,
great.
right, the Iceman. But anyway, I read he shot 600 shots a day.
Mm.
Okay, there's a clue. And then I used to go to basketball camps. I'll come in, a buddy of mine, we would literally work out like 3 or 4 hours a day, playing full court 1-on-1, taking turns doing, elbow jump. This is before the 3-point line. So we didn't really shoot from out there, because if I had a 12-footer, I wanted 18. Well, I'm a guard. So, but if, I was fast enough, you got too close, I'm going to blow by you. If you step back, I'm going to shoot it,
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm on, I'm not going to miss. So I'm going to destroy you,
Yeah.
in my mind. And, so I learned that stuff, how to model people. I guess from a Tony Robbins, where I learned to look at people, model them, and then see if I could reverse engineer their success. I don't know if I called it that then, but that's actually what I had always done.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because when you're reading biographies and when you're reading kind of articles of the most successful people in the world, people are trying to figure out, at least the most successful one, it's how do you what are they doing on a daily basis? What are some attributes that they have, and can I implement that on my business or in the industry that I'm in?
That's what everything. Like I always tell our clients, and on our show we talk about success leaves clues, right? So what you want to do is, what are the clues? What is their philosophy?
Mm,
What are their principles? I was at the 10S conference in Vegas last month with Grant Cardone, and he interviewed all these billionaires. So I'm like, all right, this is not going to be an X's and O's type conference. So I need to pay attention. And then what is their overall philosophy about life, about money, about
mm.
risk? And, once I got into that, then I was like, okay, this is really valuable. You couldn't bring a bag in, so I couldn't really record it. So I was
Record
like,
it on your
I
phone.
put it on my, yeah, but it was like you couldn't bring a charger, so it'd run out. So I was afraid, I was like, all right, I just tried to take good notes in my little but it was good. And that kind of stuff, because I've always done that with success leaves clues. Who is winning that I could study
Mm,
at, what do I do? Or the other part is when people get lazy, and this is where I learned, when I really got into marketing with Dan Kennedy. It's like, listen, the easiest thing to say is that, well, my business is different,
sure.
right? And so the key is that you've got to be able to take business is business, right? So if you can look at a thing or a philosophy, and how can I apply it to my business, is
Mm.
a better thought process. That's the work. And a lot of times that's the work that most people don't really feel like doing. And I like that. I've been good at, all right, taking this idea and seeing if I can implement it into what I'm doing.
Can you give an example?
So yeah, I was at the dentist or doctor's office. So, when you come into the doctor's office, you don't go see the doctor right away. So in my financial services practice, like, all right, you don't get to walk in and see me. So we had a person up front. So I had a little survey, also called a priority plan review. So what happens is I have them come in. You want some coffee? You want some water? Can you complete this? I haven't come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
I might say hi, but they have to complete this. And once they complete that, they bring it back to me.
Like a
And not
doctor.
looking at like a doctor reading your charts. So all of a sudden, I want to know, because now I know kind of what they earn, what their goals are.
Sure.
And so I don't go in trying to sell something. I'm a consultant, right?
You
How
find
can
a problem,
what's
and
the
here's my
problem?
solution.
Yeah. And so, because you can't really help them till you know what they want,
Mm,
or help them determine what they want. And then my job is to help them get from point A to point B safely,
mm,
and minimize risks, which
sure,
is really what I do.
sure. So what the clientels that you have, are they mostly business owners or just regular people that's working at W-2 jobs?
It's really three. Okay.
Three. Okay.
So it's upper middle income families. So W-2, executive, six figures, low five, like, let's say 80 to 300.
Okay.
But a lot of them are that, and they have 6 or 7, 8 houses.
Okay.
Right, or they have a side business and they aspire to work optional income,
Mm,
and I kind of encourage that, and then kind of put together a framework that allows them to maximize what they're doing and move towards where they want to go. So it's that I'd probably say 40, almost 50% of my clients are real estate investors,
okay.
because with what we do and showing them how to have accessible capital,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can buy or build assets, with
Sure.
assets under his money in your pocket without
Sure.
your labor.
Yep.
And then business owners,
Yeah.
because business about what the most financial advice is bad. Typical financial advice: max out your 401k, self-employee, self-employee employee pension plans.
Mm-hmm.
They're bad for entrepreneurs, because what happens is typical financial advice teaches you to put money in little silos that you
And for
can't touch
later,
for
and you
later,
can't take it
right?
out.
You
Yep.
can't take it out without jumping through a bunch of hoops,
Sure.
but you need access to capital,
Yeah.
right? So I teach that, because, most people, business owners, send their money on a one-way ticket. away from them to tie it up for 20 years, 25 years, but you need to hold it because your best investment is your business.
Yeah.
In between your 2 ears, because you're your number one asset, and then your number one investment is or your business. You put $1 in your business, you make $2, that's 100%.
Yeah.
With no risk because you know what you're doing. See, and rather than, okay, I'm gonna give most of my money to some fund manager I've never met. That doesn't even make sense.
That does make sense because not that part, but like the real estate investor part, because when you first start, or even when you get a little bit more experience, because real estate is a long-term game and
Right.
it's a long-term wealth. However, most real estate investors struggle with the short-term cash flow. That's why they have maybe a course or maybe a construction business where they have that short-term cash flow coming in, mainly because when you buy a house, right, you're not making any money from it. Yeah, there's a couple $100s of cash flow, but that's not going to make you rich.
Right.
You get rich from the appreciation down the line, and that's down the line. And as if you refi or that you sell the asset, but then when you want to buy more asset, who's coming up with the down payment?
Right.
You got to find maybe a line of credit or other people's money. And that's why all these funds are coming out, or people partner up with other people who have money to build those wealth. But as a real estate investor, once you have so much leverage that sometimes you don't have enough cash flow to buy even more.
Right. I mean, what I found, I have a client that's real successful developer and has his own what's it called, private lending company.
Sure.
And he was big in notes before that. And he says, I said, well, what would you do different? I think I had it on my show one time. It says, I would always now keep a operating business. Like you need a business like that because you need day to day, week to week cash flow.
Sure.
Right. And then the money, your profits go into real estate
Yep.
or into other businesses, but you need something to keep the lights on. I think that's the mistake people make because they fall, not the mistake, it's not the mistake, but they're not realizing because they don't look at this is why I help make people start with cash flow because
Mm.
you need to figure out what is my life cost?
Mm.
Like, what does it take a month to live my life?
Sure.
And even business owners, because they commingle so much. So it's like, okay, well, if you need $7,000 a month to live where you want to live and put your kids into school, whatever it is, 10 grand a month, whatever, you need to, your business do that?
Mm.
Because that's the goal of the business is for you to live your best life. Most people work for the business and they haven't asked the business to. A great book is, and I teach a variation of this, but it's called Profit First. It's
Yeah, the accounting principles.
yeah, and
Yep.
see, so that's backwards. Like you need to because it's what does it say in the book? A revenue minus expenses equals profit.
Mm.
But you have to flip that. It's like revenue
Right.
minus profit. Like you got to pay yourself first, right? Because you took the risk of owning the daggone business,
Mm.
right? Then it's owner's pay.
Mm.
So you have to figure out. So one of the things I start with people is, okay, what is your life cost? Because you've got to ask your business, you got to get your business is supposed to do that for you.
Yeah.
Then you got to set aside money for taxes and then operations. Really, it's operations and then taxes. But we teach people to create separate accounts. So when money comes in, we have a tagline we start people is like, tell your money where to go
Mm.
instead of asking where it went. And so now once you have that set up and automated, now your job is stay on offense, drive your money, but your money's going someplace and you're making money. You're paying yourself. Your profit is for you to, because the business, if you sell your business, people are looking for this big exit, right? You want to be able to, if your business doesn't work or you stop working, you're still supposed to be rich if you sell it, right? So you should be taking part of your money and buying real estate. If you, one of my favorite books is Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, and he says in the book, the purpose of business is to buy real estate.
Interesting.
Because you got active income, but then you need the real estate and the depreciation, the cost segregation, all that to zero out your income. That's why rich people don't pay taxes.
Yeah, that makes sense. There was this one guy I was at a mastermind. He likes to call this like the stay rich bucket and then the get rich bucket.
Right.
You want to put most of the stuff in the stay rich because that's your safety net, and then maybe take a little risk or two in the get rich money, and if it fails, then you still have to get rich part or stay rich part.
People think I gotta go no guts, no glory.
Sure.
To me, I teach one of my fourth principle of personal finance is liquidity. We have 5, right? So, but 6 to 12 months. Your first 90 days is kind of like your emergency fund,
Mm,
but everything above that is your opportunity fund so that because money finds capital. If you have capital, opportunities will find you.
sure.
You don't even have to go looking, right?
Mhm.
They'll find you. But if you don't have any capital, you don't even look. You don't even see them because you don't. If all your money's you got $1 million in a 401k, but you can't touch it. What gives to make if you see a great business opportunity or whatever, you may or may not be able to get that much. You have $1 million in your 401k, you can only get at max 50% of the account value. No, it's 50,000 or 50% account value, wherever's less, right? So you don't really have access to capital like that. So you need to store it somewhere
Right.
because a good deal comes along all the time.
Yeah.
Just like we talked about before, if you're partnering with people, there's no shortage of deals,
Sure.
right? And there's a lot of people with money on the sideline. That's where the whole
Private lending.
private lending
Yeah.
comes from, right? And so a lot of my clients do that, from their IBC policies. Let's just say it's IB policy, from their insurance policy. And so it's that kind of stuff. You just have to decide what you like, because I always tell people investing is not about buying something. It's really more about becoming something,
Mm.
right? So it's be, do, have, right? So what do you want to be? That's the decision.
Yeah,
You want to be a good business owner. You want to be a good investor. Do you want to be a good trader? That's becoming. You got to learn how to do that, right?
Mhm.
Then it's do. All right, now you got to do something, strategy, and then it's have. Then you get to have the fruits of your labor, financial freedom, and people want to go right to have
Yeah.
or tell me what to do.
Have you ever played the cash flow game?
I do.
That's a fun game. That's
It's so funny because it imprints on you. Like if for 2 weeks later, you still are thinking about, or you making decisions in real life. You're like, well, wait, is this a doodad? Right? Wait, I'm pulling out of my cash fund, so I don't have down payment for this next asset.
Yeah.
I find it imprints on you. And I tell people, I'm trying to I have a 13-year-old. I'm trying to, no, I don't say I'm trying because we're going to do that this summer. I'm going to play with them like at least weekly, if not bi-weekly, so I can, she's got about 4 or 5 little girlfriends. I'm going to train them all to be little capitalists.
Oh, really? But yeah, I mean, me and my girlfriend, we played that game, I think, for almost 3 to 4 hours straight. It was me and her, and it was just going back and forth. And there's actually a meetup here in Philly called the Cashflow Game Meetup, and it's really about
Really? You gotta tell me that. I haven't seen it.
it's with Diggs.
Oh,
One,
great. Okay.
yes, one,
Okay.
and when you mentioned about the capital thing, when I was playing that game, when I was with Diggs, I think I sold a house or something like that. As it went for appreciation, I had all these cash and capital, and it was just like,
I've been to games where they're wholesaling deals,
yes, yeah,
inside of cash flow. I was like,
yep,
wait, you really can do what you do in real life?
yeah,
I was like, what?
yeah,
Okay. But see, that's what I mean. But see, it's just like I was talking to this guy on my show about trading, right? You can get a trading account
mm,
and don't cut on the money,
mm,
right? And just practice till you start to get good at the trades. Then you actually put money into it. And so what the cash flow game allows you to do is a simulator. So
yep,
you can practice, you know, the way of thinking and it's through gamifying becoming.
yeah. I remember playing that game the first time I was in a real estate cruise. They actually had Robert Kiyosaki on there and teaching the cash flow, and I was like, I never heard about this game. It's like,
Not
no,
the one with the real estate.
the real estate guys.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly that
I
one.
met them at a conference in New York one time.
Yeah, they're awesome. Very smart group of individuals. And when I first played the game, I was like, oh, okay. I started off as a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and so just for the people who don't know what the cash flow game is, it's basically a Monopoly 10x.
Yes.
In reality,
Right.
like it's not a game where you just take over everyone's assets, but it's a game where you play together and win together.
Because it's about collaboration.
Correct.
Yeah.
And when you start off, you get a bunch of different type of careers. So you can have a janitor, you can have a lawyer, I think a truck driver. It's just different realistic careers that everyday people might have or can have or already have.
Right.
And I start with a lawyer, which is, you think that's really good, right? You have high income, you're very well off. However, you also have a higher expenses.
Right.
And when you want to exit the rat race, your cash flow have to exceed the expenses. and therefore you could get out the rat race and then you could be financially free. But
But
that's
it's harder to like doctor, airline pilot, lawyer.
Yes,
And so if you're making $10,000, $15,000 a month, that means you got to get $15,000 a month passive income
correct.
to get out the rat race. And then but if you're a janitor making 3,500, I forget the number right now.
Oh, wait, yeah,
Janitor
yeah,
cards,
it's very low.
it's easier to get out the rat. You're not rich. Like even when Kiyosaki, when he says, "Look, I was financially free," he had I think he had 20 houses. He was making like $10,000 a month,
Hmm.
but his expenses were $3,000 a month. So he wasn't rich, but he was financially independent. I
Yeah,
mean, he could live like he wanted to live from the income from his resource. Now he's expanded from there, but he was able to take a year off and
do whatever you
do
want.
whatever he wanted.
Go on a real estate
And that's
cruise.
where the book came from.
Sure.
Not the book, the course came from, because he was able to have a year off and just think.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do is we have to buy our life back.
Mm, interesting. Tell us more about like the buying the life back.
Well, I mean, the goal is, see, people have this goal, like in typical financial advice, they want I call it the accumulation theory, right? So they're taught buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt, buy term, invest the difference. And what I've learned, because I started out my first 15 years of my career with that, I had to took me 3 or 4 years to unlearn that and kind of learn what I'm doing now. And, there is what I call the velocity method.
Mm,
But what is your objective? Because you want to become financially free, which is the capacity, right? But you're focused on accumulating this nest egg, $1 million, $2 million, which is really hard. I want to say impossible, but I'm going to say hard. And you're never there. And then you always worry about running out of money.
mm,
Whereas if you're financially free, that's capacity. And I use the Jim Rohn definition, being able to live like you want to live from the income from your personally invested resources.
mm.
And so, yeah, what was today? So yesterday I do a class for my clients every week. Actually, we do like we call it the Money for Life Club. So I'll just do live Q&As and education of our clients. And so, well, actually, one of my clients said, you should make this a session and record this and put it out on YouTube. But I did a hot seat, just an impromptu hot seat,
Sure.
because this person came from this real estate course they spent like, I don't know, 20 grand on. And they come out and they don't really still have a strategy.
That's a that's a waste of
You know what
20
I mean?
grand.
And so I was like, "Well, what do you want?" And I made her, "Well, what do you want?" "Well, I want," what did she say? I said, "How much would you think you'd net on a property?" $500 a month. "Okay, well, what do you want?" "I think I want $15,000 a month." So I made her break that down. "Well, how many doors you need?
Mm,
And when do you want it? 3 years, 5 years?" And it was, I need 5 doors. If I want it in 3 years, a year, 3 years. And then see, now you got a goal. And then I just help people work backward into a game plan. And then it's like if you want to have a good year, we kind of superimpose. Hope this is not too long way to answer. We kind of superimpose the 12-week year
oh, yeah.
on our
Great book.
planning,
Yep.
right? And then I tell people, look, if you want to have a good year, you got to have 4 good quarters. Right? If you want to have a good quarter, you gotta have 3 good months. If you have 3 good months, you gotta have 4 good
Good weeks.
weeks, right? And if you have a good week, you gotta have 5. I want to work 4-day week, but let's say 5 to 6 good days, right? And so you have to win the day. So, but then I'll say, all right, so now win the day means, all right, based upon this, how many offers should you be making a day or a week?
Mm,
How many things are you looking at? Because most people get in, they say, oh, da, 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 but they don't have like this is what I do when
like
I
a
wake
plan.
up in the morning, plan, a real, like, let me add this to my calendar and I'm going to do this because, you have to, I always tell people your work ethic much match your dreams.
Mm,
And if I were to look at your calendar, or when I look at people's cash flow, because basically I help people read their financial statements. And I said, look, I don't see any evidence in what you're doing and how you manage money that tells me that this is the outcome that you're trying to do, because what you're doing won't get you there.
yeah.
And so I'm kind of like the minister of harsh reality.
The school of hard knocks.
Hard knocks. I'm just gonna, you tell me what you want. Curtis just gonna beat you over the head with your goals.
Yeah, that makes sense because I've seen other people, and it is sometimes including myself, we put these absurd goals that we want to do in a year, but we don't want to break it down into, okay, how is that going to look like in a quarter? How is it going to look like in a week? What's your next weekly goals? And the crazy thing about it now, it's like, If you have a goal that you're trying to reach, you could just slap that into ChatGPT and then you could break it.
I know. I listen, that's my new best friend, right? And because you don't, especially if you read a lot, like
Sure.
you can say, look, so are you familiar with the 12-week year? Yes. Well, I have a goal to do this and I want to get X amount of how I want to have this much of financial freedom. I think I just ask the question, put it in there. It'll spit out for you. What do you want? Single families or you want multi-family,
Right.
and it'll break out your work schedule. I haven't done that, but I've done it with other stuff and it'll kind of do that. And then now you've got something you can look at every day,
Yeah.
and because so now if you don't make it, because that's what I do with our clients. I'll do a version of, well, if we're having this conversation, let's say if you are coming to meet me, I'll say, listen, if we were having this conversation, sometimes I'll do 36 months, but sometimes I'll do really short term. So let's say it's April and I was record this. I'll say, if we're having this conversation next April, 2026, what has to happen in order for you to feel happy with your progress?
Mm,
And I may just leave it there, or I'll say personally, professionally, financially.
mm,
And because, it's hard to reach a target you don't have. Because I, as a financial strategist, I can't help you till I know what you want. So I don't go in and lead with products or strategies. I want to know what you want and why. Is this something you're willing to work for? And I think you need to know. And so I just kind of, pull their focus together. And then, all right, so now we know what you want. Well, what are you doing now? What's working?
hmm
What's not working? you know, and then we just kind of break it down. So that's kind of what I help people do. It's like I think people are smart enough to. I think 2 + 2 is 4, and so I don't think financial planning is that deep. People talk about standard deviation and stock this and stock that is not financial. Financial planning is 5 parts. This is when they created the designation, Lauren Dutton in 1969 is helping. It's 5 parts helping average families spend, cash flow management,
mm.
save, invest, insure, and plan for financial freedom. See, so it's investing is one of 5
One of
things,
5 things. Yeah.
and what happens is it's kind of been hijacked where it's the thing. And I would argue it's last. It's not even first. It's last. And so you have all these wealth managers, and really they're just investment advisors. But that's not funny. I have financial planners that insurance is the foundation of that, and I have planners that don't even understand or like insurance.
Yeah. Before we jump into insurance, when you're speaking to your clients, how can you know that it is what they really want, or is it something they should do or they should want? Like, for example, right? If I'm a real estate investor, I want to grow big. Like, I
Mhm.
want to build or have multiple doors and makes X amount of money. But that's really, in reality, that's what I should do as a real estate investor. Okay, you have multiple houses. Now you have to grow even more and even more and even more. But sometimes that's not what I want to do. I just wanted to have some sort of cash flow for me to live my life. Have you seen
There's
that with
no
clients?
should. It's what do you want?
Mm,
Everybody doesn't want to be that big. So it's if you're happy, I'm happy. My job is to get you. I try to sit down with people with an agenda. What do you want and why?
mm,
And then we work backwards. So I kind of I teach principles first, right? Because see, most people don't have a filter to kind of identify if what they're looking at fits their buy box, if you will, right? And then they're taking too much risk. See, but so I have I kind of take the opposite. And we never have to get into products or insurance because it's not about that, right?
yeah.
But it's principles, right? So what are my principles? Spend less than you make. Okay, so we if your borrows from Myra Gold, it says if your outflow is greater than your inflow, then your upkeep is your downfall because you're spending more
Spending more
than
than
what
you
you're
receive.
making, and you're either draining your savings or you're collateralizing your future. You're spending money you've not yet earned, which is debt,
Mm,
right? And you're using future earnings as collateral, and that's a slippery slope. So you have to fix that. So most time, if I can't we have to fix that first. Like if you come to see me and you're doing that, then we got to throw you on an operating table and plus,
yeah.
take the bullets out because you're about to bleed out, right? So I start there, right? And then, so now once you fix that, now what's our second principle? I want you to save. Let me define savings: safe, liquid, accessible, guaranteed. So I'm not talking about
Mm,
401k. That's not saving. That's investing. I'm talking about savings. I try to create a clear delineation between saving and investing. So 15, 20%. So you make 100 grand. Curtis wants you saving $20,000 a year. All right. Second principle, and this is where people drop the ball because when I look at investors and business owners, there's so many gaps in their plan because you have to have a plan that works no matter what. Okay. And so you have to build a moat. Think of the Game of Thrones. You got to build a moat around your castle. So that principle I teach is maximum protection. So the foundation is saving, or is cash flow management, saving, and protection. Okay. So what do you have to protect? Your stuff.
Your assets.
Your assets. So your stuff. So let's say it's called property and casualty, right? So most people they don't have enough liability coverage in their car insurance. So you should have maximum protection. Looks like 250, 500 property damage, 100,000 of property damage, bodily injury, uninsured motors. You have to make yourself bulletproof. That's building a moat. Replacement costs on your house, at least $500,000 of liability on your house. Umbrella coverage. I had a client, and this person had I don't know, about 3 or 4 multifamilies, 4 LLCs. So I have a little chart where the stuff jumps out at you because she make 100 grand net off the properties. And I said, "Do you have umbrella coverage?" She goes, "What's that?" "No, I have these LLCs over here." I said, "LLCs, here's the operative word, limited liability company, right? So your first line of defense is your umbrella coverage. So somebody falls on your property, you call the insurance company first to defend you, right? And it was relatively inexpensive, but see, everybody goes to these little, transactional people that give them stuff, but nobody looks at the entire picture. See, I teach holistic planning, and I'm the macro manager looking at all your stuff. Okay, we put it in a model where we see everything, and now we can have discussions about it, or I'll meet with your people to make sure we're all on the same page, right? You got to protect what happens if you get hurt and can't work, if you still have a W-2, right? What happens if you get sick, illness, chronic illness, you have a stroke, you can protect against that. But this is not sexy.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to skip this, but I'm telling you,
they look at it like additional expenses.
Yeah, but shit happens. Excuse the expression, right? And so you have to, that's what I mean by playing. You have to play defense, right? And you can't get it when you need it. Then you've got to look at, okay, well, do I have asset protection? Do I have wills? Do I have trusts? Do I have entities? Do I have adequate life insurance? Most people are underinsured with their life insurance, right?
Sure.
And so you look at all of that, but the principle is maximum protection. And then you figure out, all right, what the max is and what is your economic life value. So we kind of do that. Then my third principle is full replacement of assets at death, guaranteed. So now I say that I'm not going to get too detailed, but there's a certain product I don't like because of that. So a lot of people talk about, what about you? What do you think about, to go one product, Index Universal Life? I don't like it because it doesn't fit it doesn't fit with infant banking, but it also doesn't fit my principles of guarantees. Okay. Without the other stuff, there's other stuff, but just if it's not guaranteed, I don't like it because I like certainty.
Got it.
There's an economic value of certainty.
Yeah.
The fourth principle is liquidity, 6 to 12 months. So you got money for emergencies and opportunities. And the fifth is velocity, right? So so your goal is to take your liquidity or other people's money and buy or build assets that send you a check. We call them cash flow engines. So I want you building cash flow engines in whatever asset class that you enjoy. But what I track with our clients is, what is your net cash flow after the mortgages and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And then what is your net profit from your businesses? And then every year we're looking at, are you growing that? Because see, what people do is they're chasing their goals. But if you ever read, what's that book? 10X Easier 2X, or
Benjamin Harvey.
Right. All progress should be a gap in the gain, right? You should measure progress backwards. Right?
Yeah. From looking at your future.
From looking at your future. So if you say, well, look, all right, I'm making $5,000 a month. No, it's $5,000 a year, $500 a month of passive income, and your goal is to get to $2,000 by the end of the year, but you only make $900. Okay, that's progress. You have to celebrate that. See, what we do is we're in the gap because we didn't hit our goal, but you did make progress.
Right.
So I'm constantly in the gap. So I have to always remind myself that, okay, all right, I didn't hit this number, but I am in the, one of the top financial people in the country, production wise and whatever. But I have ambitious goals. So I'll always it's good if you're a hard charger, but you're still always in the gap. You're always beating yourself.
Well, yeah, like
Because
I'll start
so
thinking.
you do better, right? So I kind of teach that first. I get that across to help people organize. I want them to see where they are and do we need to make improvements.
Okay.
Now you see there was no other than that, me just throwing it out there just to piss some people off, but there's no products involved in that. You gotta have what do you want, and you have to have a framework to organize your finances. So to me, that's where you start. You have to have a philosophy. Jim Rohn used to say most people don't have a money problem, they have a philosophy problem.
Problem. Yeah, I've heard about that one. He's the OG.
Yes, the OG. That's Tony Robbins' mentor.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. That's how he got started. He was like, "Hey, I'm spending like couple hundred or a couple $1,000s." It's like, "Yeah, just come in here and then let me know what you think." It's like, "I don't want to spend that much money." And then he ended up just flying with Jim Rohn. Look where he is now.
Yeah, yeah, and I successfully have clues. I always tell people I don't have any original thoughts. I've just read a book, almost a book a week, at least 2 books a month since Amway in college got me in the personal development bug, and my superpower is that I can assimilate a lot of information really quickly
That's awesome.
and draw it to you on a yellow pad.
Yeah, yeah,
So and Jim Rohn says, "Look, if you want to get good at something, what do? Practice, study, and teach."
yeah.
Right? So y'all should read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, play cash flow with your kids
And then teach it.
and teach it because that's how you internalize it for yourself to, if you can't teach to Albert Einstein said, if you can't teach to a 12-year-old, you don't understand it.
Mm. Now, going back into the five, I guess, philosophy, the framework, right? Would you see that as a progression based on age? Because usually, right, when you're a teenager, you're doing the cash flow management, right? Like you want to be frugal. You're not spending that much.
They don't want to be frugal. That's a myth, but okay. I have
like-
3 daughters. They're like, I have to twist their arm and say, look, I need you to, I paid my daughter $10 an hour to come. This week I was speaking at an event and I said, look, you got to come help me set up this table. I'm paying you $10 an hour. And I wrote her a check because I opened up a bank account. And I said, all right,
okay.
you have to save 20% of this. I said, how much is 20% of this? $30. $6? Yes. So we're going to deposit and you're going to move $6 to your savings account. So, because
And then the taxes.
she was burning a hole in her pocket to go to the mall, right? And spent all $30. I'm like, nope, we're not doing that.
You know what my dad did when I was younger? So I started working at 9 years old, and my dad had like a cleaning franchise, and I would hate it because I'd go to school, and then we go straight into like cleaning, like libraries, schools, and offices. By 4 o'clock we start, so it's like I only have like an hour to myself, right? School and work. And the crazy thing about it is that I only got paid $5 a day.
That sounds like my day. And got $20 a week. We had a bar. During the day we had no customers, so I'm literally working at the bar, and he give me 20 after 5 days.
Yeah.
So that's less than you. I was like getting $20 a week, and I was 22. And I was learning it, and I was still doing. I wasn't any good at financial services yet, but it gave me the freedom to do that at night. So I was just basically holding fort.
And I didn't touch any of that money. I couldn't touch it.
Oh wow!
He said we had what is called like a custodian bank account where when you have a parent and yourself and they have full control. I can't withdraw that money without his permission. That's funny. So he would send it to that bank, and then I never touched a dime. And I was struggling at school. I was like, I want to buy this book from the book fair, and I couldn't afford it because I had no money.
That's funny.
But thinking forward now, that helped a lot because if I gain, the $5 a day, and even though I would save, and I probably would spend it on like games or just things that's not really helpful for my life. So I'm thankful.
Brandy Melville, my daughter, because I'm going to we live near Suburban Square, so every time she wants to walk up and she goes by Brandy Melville, she wants to get herself a new top. I just saw this top. It's only, XYZ. Wait, you need a job. You to figure out what you can do for me because money just come from Cash App because you asked for it, right? That's the message that we got to get across. But see, what's the first lesson in Rich Dad Poor Dad? The rich do not work for money. So that was actually good training. Now, it really means they don't work for earned income because that's the highest tax. But that's another, you got to understand. See, it's hard to win a game if you don't know the rules. And most of us are playing by the wrong rules, or we don't know the rules at all.
Why is that?
Because knowing the rules, if you knew the game, you wouldn't play the way they want you to play. So every financial product is built with but like, so think of the insurance and mutual funds and annuities and, well, they're all like products that, those companies are product manufacturers,
Yeah.
right? So what are for them to make a profit, all financial products are sold with these four rules in mind.
Mm.
They want your money. They want it on a regular basis. They want to keep it as long as possible, and they want to give it back never, or as slow as possible,
Sure.
right? But what is your goal? Financial freedom, passive income, great expenses. So they don't there's no way they come together, right? But what happens is you playing the game because their objective is AUM, assets under management. They want control of your money. So they've trained you to think this way so you willingly give up control of your money. And so when you want control, that's strange.
Mm.
And so you're an oddball because you're not doing what everybody else does, but, they've kind of brainwashed us over the last 100 years to give up control of our capital.
Yeah, and the majority of people, I don't know if this could be like a conspiracy, but I feel like the government want us not to be financially illiterate because they would lose money.
What
What do
you
you think?
said it, I did. It's just my thought. I never met a conspiracy I didn't like. So yeah, because it's not, you just don't want the government controlling all your money.
Sure.
Let's just put it that way, because that's not their job. That's your see. Everybody has one of the things that we teach is that you can't control. I did a class on this yesterday. It's like you can't control the economy of the world. You can't control the economy at large. So whether your candidate won or didn't win,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. But what can you control? You could control your personal economy, your production, and your consumption as a family unit, right? You're the CEO of your life.
Right.
And so you'll hear me quote Jim Rohn. I'm sorry. But that's my man. Jim Rohn said, listen, two things he said. Listen, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better.
Mm.
And then he says the winds of adversity. I have this on my wall because this is really something I think about all the time. And what I try to teach our clients is the winds of adversity blow on us all. The difference is how you set the sail.
Mm.
So when you're working on personal development, when you're playing cash flow, when you're reading, when you're going to masterminds, I'm always working, and your listeners should always be working on how can I set a better sail instead of being mad about stuff. They won't let me, I can't do this because I'm putting your excuse.
Right.
Right. And so get better, because your income is a result of creating value in the marketplace. So if you're getting better and you can solve more problems, you can negotiate better and help your sellers solve their problem to buy their house,
Yeah.
right? Your product is safe, clean, affordable housing, right? Now you're parting with the government because what does the tax system want? The government, because two tax codes, right? One for landlords, one for business owners.
Yep.
So what do they want? They want jobs. The government, meaning they want food, they want energy, and they want housing.
Mm.
So if you will help the government do what they want, guess what? You will seriously minimize your taxes, So, you invest in oil and gas, you can write down like 70, 80% of that, all the income against your ordinary income. Real estate, cost segregation, depreciation, which is not even real money
Mm.
that you can write off against your earned income, right? So agriculture, so businesses, you can write, most you could right now, if you have a job, you earn money, you get taxed, then you get to spend what's left over. So it's hard to win when you're only getting like half, 40 to 50% of your money, right? And so if you have business, you earn money, then you get to spend, save, invest it pre-tax,
Mm.
take your legitimate deductions after you've done what you need to do with your money, then pay Uncle Sam what's left over. And that's the law. That's how the code works. We just don't know the game.
Yeah.
It's out there. But if you're just taught, go to school, get education, max out your 401k, buy and hold, you're in it for the long haul, give your money to us, which is basically what all of the ads say on TV. You don't have the time to the training and personally manage your own money, so just give your money to us. What's your number? We will take care of you.
Yeah. It's insane.
Stay in the matrix.
Is it you controlling the money, or is it the other people's that are controlling the money, and other people want to control other people's money to make them more money, and that's really how the companies like Blackstone and BlackRock are accumulating so much wealth and somewhat controlling the
But
world.
see, so the thing is, what are they doing, and how can we do that at our level?
Mm,
That's the question. So we don't ask the right questions. Oh, they're cheating us because they don't pay taxes. No, they understand the rules.
yeah.
So the
Yep.
question you should be asking is, how can I do that? I always tell people, don't people. I say, look, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Mm.
You're right. Don't even hate the game. You don't know how to
Learn the game.
learn the game. That's the answer. But see, that's too much like work.
Mm, got it. I have a quote here. I think we took it from your website. It's like, typical financial planning teaches people to accumulate money. I teach them to use it and recycle it.
Yes.
How?
So we talk about the accumulation theory.
Yep.
Right. So with velocity, one of the ways to do that is here's the principle: save.
Right.
The strategy, be the bank. Okay. So my short framework of that is earn money, bank it. That means save it somewhere that lets you use the money,
Money.
and so save it and spend it at the same time. Okay. So earn it, bank it, borrow it, meaning use your money as collateral, spend it, repay it. So that's the velocity. Because see, now you're creating velocity a couple ways. One, you're creating velocity through simultaneous use.
Mm,
Okay. So you have one. So if you put $1 in the bank or in a CD, it's doing one thing, earning interest
right. Small interest.
and depreciating. Right. Yes. But if I pay a life insurance properly, no, let's back this up. Properly structured dividend paying whole life with a mutual company. So don't y'all hear this? Oh, I bought whole life. It don't work that way because you or the person you got it from doesn't know how to do this. Like I gave you a gift, the book Become Your Own Banker, right? Well, if you meet a person, you heard about this, you heard Curtis talk about this, if they don't literally beat you in the head with the book within the first 5 minutes,
Yeah.
they don't do it
Mm,
because it's not an insurance thing. It's kind of a framework, it's a philosophy. So what if you could save your money and spend somebody else's, right? So part of that is understanding the difference between compounding interest and amortizing interest. So you can still get utilization and uninterrupted growth,
mm,
right? And so it starts from the framework. See, most people don't understand what I call the financial physics, right? So, and here's another principle: you finance everything you buy,
mm,
right? Because you either use some other people's money, right? That's interest. Everybody understands that. But what they don't understand is that when you pay cash, you say, oh, I pay cash for my real estate. All right, well, you're giving up interest you could be earning. So you don't like paying interest, but you must not like earning interest
mm.
because you had to liquidate your capital to get the asset. What if you could do both?
Interesting.
So what if you could have your cake and eat it too? And then to have uninterrupted compounding. So now you're getting velocity because you got insurance is you're growing cash value. The cash value is earning, 3-4%. You can collateralize it for 4%. You're earning dividends, which are tax free, and it's life insurance. So now you got $1 doing like 3 or 4 things at the same time. So that's velocity. So now let's say you leverage your capital and you borrow against so let's say you're paying, I don't know, let's keep with the example, your premium, because people say, how much does it cost? Well, if I say, what did I say you should save? You make 100,000, 15% of that is
15 or
15,000,
20%. Yeah.
right? So that you're going to run through a properly structured policy. So now, a couple of years, you got 20 some odd thousand, 25,000 in there. So you could now borrow against that and go buy. So now your listeners, or a lot of them are real estate investors.
Sure.
So now would that cover a down payment on something?
Definitely.
Or a course. So now what if you can get that down payment without have to liquidating your capital, or where you put your money when you do a cash out or a flip is going into somebody's bank. Why not yours? Banking's a concept, right? It just means creating a pool of capital that you control.
Mm,
See, banking is inescapable. See, because I don't know how I feel about this infinite banking thing. You're already banking.
right.
You just don't own the bank. Like, because the profits are going to PNC, to whoever, your private lender. So
Right.
what if you could figure out what your need for financing was and capitalize a system where now when money hit your asset column, it never left
So
because you're using it. And then you say, look, if I was willing to get a hard money guy at 9%, even though I can get the money at 4, then I'm going to pay it back at 9.
Right.
We call that being an honest banker.
So let's start from the first part, right? So
Okay.
right now what is infinite banking?
So infinite banking is a process. It's a concept, a framework of understanding that when you all money is going through, there's only one pool of money.
Right.
Okay. So it's either controlled by banks, Wall Street, insurance companies.
Right.
And so infinite banking is just a process whereby you're capitalizing, creating a pool, your own pool of capital that you control that can move at cost to meet some need you have. So it's just changing
The money goes.
where the money goes
Right.
so that you can control it so that it always stays in your life. You get utilization and uninterrupted growth at the same time.
And where's that money come from?
Your earnings.
Your earnings. And then the earnings is from retirement funds, or was it
I mean, like
or
you're
like money?
your earned income
Right.
that you're working, and when you get paid, it goes into somebody's bank.
Mm.
So that's where you start. Sometimes you might have, because everybody's different. So some people I'm just starting them with, okay, you make 50 grand a year. Let's start you at $400 a month. You don't have to be rich to do infinite banking. It's
Right.
really a thought process. And I don't really care what people start with. I just care that they start because there's levels to it. So I got to
Right.
get you in the game. And so if you're starting with, this is what I can set aside monthly, then we're going to start there.
Mm.
Right. I've got people and I talked to this business owner. I showed it to him. He says, okay, yeah, I could do 100,000. I said, it's not a one-off. It's every year. He goes, yeah, I could do that. And he had $500,000 sitting in a checking account. So it was no big deal.
This is through savings?
Through savings because he made a lot of money. He was a CEO of a company.
Right.
There was no company, but it's generally through savings. So the first level is like, let's redirect where you store your savings. So I want people to have what I call ATM money. So I want you to have a month or 2 months in the bank.
Liquid.
Bank, liquid. Like
Yep.
in where you can use your debit card. We teach a cash flow system using a online app called Currents, where I get them 3.5%, and we show them how to manage cash flow so that they can pay themselves first. But I want it liquid.
Mm.
So that's where I start. So you don't start putting all your money into a policy. That's
Right.
that's you don't borrow money. I have people think that people tell them to borrow on their home equity to fund the policy.
Mm.
No, that's dumb, right? Because if you took a loan to fund the policy, it's not a magic money box. You know what I mean? So now you got a loan you got to pay back.
And then you're paying something else.
You got to pay something else. I mean, that's stupid. But see, so that's either so the agent can make money. You are thinking it's more than it is. It's not magic. It's just where do you store? The question I ask for people is, where do you store your cash? Where do you store your liquidity? All wealth has to be warehoused somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. It's not really much more complicated than that. You're just changing what's my first principle? Spend less than you make. Part of all your earnings yours to keep. Rob the richest man in Babylon. So now we're going to redirect some of that to a properly structured policy. And then you might have to capitalize. If you're only doing $500 a month, it's going to be a minute for you can buy a car with it.
Right.
For example. But if and you can have more than one. So what we do is, as our clients grow, I want to start them somewhere comfortable that their cash flow I don't want them to lose sleep.
Right.
Overpaying premium. But what'll happen is you tend to get cost of living raises. If you're an investor, you'll get better. Your cash flow is going to grow. I've got people now paying 80 grand a year, but it's funded by the rents because they start out with 8 or 9 properties. Now they got about 50.
Yeah.
We started with one policy, we converted term, and so now as they grew, they would do a BRRRR method. They'd pull out 150,000. She'd pay back her loans, the hard money lender, the credit cards, and then what's left over, and then we would put the rest of it in the policy. So what people do, they do a BRRRR method. They'll get it out and they'll dump it right into the next deal.
Right.
Right. And it's not bad. It just could you be more efficient? Right. So if you put it into the next deal, you just make one stop. Right. And then now you collateralize it, put it in the next deal, but now you have the asset and you still have the money.
Got it. So let's backtrack a little bit. So once you save up the money, now do you get the whole life policy? Is
Yes. Well, I'm doing them concurrently. So it's not either or. So let's say let's say I'm starting somebody. I say, look, all right, you're making 100 grand. I want you to save 15%. So some people are a little more aggressive than this. I know who my clients are.
Mhm.
So I got to kind of get them in the game. So I'll say, look, I want you saving 15%, but I might only let you do 8 or 10% through the policy,
Got it.
especially if you're not liquid enough yet. So I still want you to have ATM money till you prove yourself that you can do this comfortably. I want you to have money you can get to in 15 minutes. So we'll build that up
Mm.
maybe your first year, and then we'll begin to, move more of it into the strategy. We're storing most of like I keep about 2 months in the bank, and then our family has like 6 policies, and I store them, most of our capital there.
Got it. Okay. So when it comes to whole life, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of stigma, right? People are like, oh, these insurance agents, they just want to make their money, and they can make a lot of money from whole life versus term life. For a young person, and most of our audience are younger crowds here, would you recommend them to start whole life policy? Because if they're young, they're healthy, that's a cheaper route, but then they're stuck to it for their whole life. What are some
Well, that's
misconceptions?
good. That's not a bad thing once you see how they work. But I would say it depends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're out, because remember, see, the insurance is the tactic. That's step 3.
Right.
The strategy is step 2,
Right.
being the bank, and the principle is step 1. So if you're saving, I want to see you save. I like people because the answer is really, it's not either term or whole life. It's really both. So if I talk to somebody with a family,
Mm.
so what's my second principle? Maximum protection. Okay, so maximum protection means, let's say you're a young person and you're 28.
Sure.
Okay, so and you're making 80 grand. So if you take your annual income multiply by 25, that's your economic life value. That's what the insurance company thinks you're worth. So I want people to buy their net worth while they're young, while they're healthy. And so when I do that strategy, I'm solving for, well, what's the most insurance you can get for the least amount of money.
Why
And now
25?
it's just an industry thing, right? Because if you're over 40, then is your income times 20.
Mm.
If you're over 50, is your income times
50?
15. And over 60 is time 10. And there's some network variations in there.
Okay.
So that's a rule of thumb, because what you're buying insurance for is, if you have it's replacement costs,
Right.
right? So, and so when people died in 9/11, this was the formula that the lawyers use in the wrongful death suits. They
Got it.
use the human life value formula.
Yeah.
So I said, look, if it's good enough for them, why are you cheating yourself? So you want to solve for that. I only use convertible term, meaning that I can, without you having to requalify, we can take part of that and then create the whole life from that.
Interesting.
So some people, I start there, and then we just clean up their cash flow, and then we might not do the whole life for 6 months or a year. But now already got them covered. So now when you're ready, because see, people take for granted to always be able to get insurance, right? I have people have strokes.
Right.
They're all of a sudden their A1C shoots up and they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, or they have some weird thing, and now you're uninsurable.
Mm.
So you want to get it while you can get it. Stop messing around. I tell people, don't die for free, right? Even if I had insurance, $250,000 insurance when I was 21 and single. One, because I was selling it. I believe you show what you sell.
Yeah, yeah.
And, my parents put me through private school in high school, and, why don't die for free? I paid my first death claim at 22, and it was a cousin who was single. I replaced a $10,000 whole out, and this is why I was there with. So I was, whole life was a devil then to me. But what happened was, within 9 months of me placing that contract, this person got some weird respiratory ailment. Within 72 hours, they were dead.
Wow.
And I took my family member 100 grand, which that was a lot then. I mean, now that's
Yeah.
nothing, but that money was able to help a brother, because later pay for one of his daughter's wedding, college, a lot of stuff, a legacy. So, we are, why should you have to start over every generation
Mm.
when you can buy dollars for 20 cents
Mm.
using life insurance? So it's both. And then even if they're single, see, because you want to be the bank. See, so I don't even let people work with me if they don't read the book. So I'm not going to convince you of nothing,
Mm.
or anything might be right. But I'm not going to convince you if you don't get the concept or the framework.
Right.
then I'm not going to let you do it because I don't have the energy to push your boulder up the hill. So if you happy with what you're doing and you think Uncle Dave can walk on water, that I'm into the market, I'm into real estate. See, it's not, see, with insurance, it's not either or, it's both.
Mm,
Right. So what I'd want you to do, if you're a young person listening to this, I would work on giving you a cash flow system first. That's step one. Okay. Because most wealth is lost right there, how you manage money.
mm,
Then we would look at what are your goals? Could this help you enhance what you're trying to do? Because think about this, you're going on vacation,
right.
you're buying cars, you're buying, because when I say earn it, bank it, borrow it, spend it, what do you spend on? Major capital purchases.
Mm,
So I define those as anything you can't pay for in full within your monthly cash flow. And you got to finance it. Well, you finance everything you buy. So that you'll go on vacation and you'll either save for it and liquidate the account, or you'll put in a credit card and spend the rest of the year paying
paying off the
off the
credit
credit card.
card.
So here's a hybrid. Well, so why not put it on a credit card? See, now you get the points.
Right.
When you get back, take a policy loan, pay the credit card off, and the money that you're willing to give to Amex or Visa or Cap One, you send that money back to a pool of capital that you control.
Mm,
That's how I use it as a young person. And so if you start building that up when you need a car or a down payment for a property, or you start looking at, I got a young guy right now, he's 23.
mhm.
No, he started was 23. He's son of one of my clients out on the West Coast. And we were going over his policy yesterday. 2 years in, he's got 23,000 of cash value at 25. I said, I said, I'm so proud of you. He's like, his dad's got like a couple 100,000 in the two years and work with me. But he does that, and then he got a bonus. So we put his bonus, this room to policy and whole extra money. So we're putting like another $7,000 in the policy over and above what he's paying, and then he's going to put some of it because he likes the market. He's going to invest some of it.
Okay.
I'm fine because you got outside in savings, you probably got $30,000 liquid.
Right. So so you mentioned
23,
yeah,
25 now. 25 starting at 23.
okay. So he have money. You said put back in the money into the policy.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Like we can just put money into the whole life.
To a point,
Okay.
right? So it's not a big bank account. So there's a limit that's set by the IRS. So when I'm building them, it's called a MEC, modified employee. Why am I going blank? MEC, modified employee.
Compensation.
No, modified employee MEC contract, right? So that means if you put too much money in,
Mm,
the IRS will treat the life insurance like a 401k.
right. That's what I was
Right.
saying.
So what happens is we solve for, when I build them, I'm basically solving for minimum non-MEC. So basically how little insurance would IRS let you get away with as per their rules.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I try to minimize the cost of insurance and then maximize how much money you can get into it. So back to your other question, what is making a lot of money? No. And when practitioners do this, we literally are backing out like 60% of our compensation. That's why there's early cash value, because we're putting it it's called a paid up additions rider, where you're putting extra money in. Where that money goes in is cash, and you can use it like next week if you wanted to. Like people say, oh, it takes too long. It takes too long because you talk somebody didn't structure it right. You're putting $150 a month in because you asked me dumb questions like how much does it cost?
Right.
But what did I say? Yeah, how much does it cost? Can you save 10% of your income? That's what it costs then.
Got it. Okay. So you're putting money into the policy, and
He had room
right.
over and above that. I created, because I knew we got bonuses, so that when he got the bonus, we called up, okay, here's how much room you have before you hit the MEC line.
Mhm.
And it was about $7,000.
Got it. So you have that make a line, and it is basically a limit what the IRS says that
Yeah.
you can put
And
money
we
into the
do that
policy.
based upon your cash flow. Like, I let the clients drive the car. I don't
Right.
tell them what to do. It's like, because it's really dictated by how much you understand the concept, your cash flow. It's not, I don't, oh, you should do this,
Right. Right.
I don't know what you should do. You
So
might not do it at all.
so you're putting into the policy, and then you're borrowing against it. But when you put it in a policy, does it go into like a mutual fund, a stock?
No. So what you're doing is, good question. You're buying a contract, right?
Mhm.
It's really a ledger, right? So whole life is a contract. So it's not into mutual funds. That's why I like certainty. So I'm buying into a guaranteed contract that when you see the number on the ledger, this is how much money you have available, right?
Right.
So if you pay your premium, this is what you get. So now you got a foundation of certainty,
Right.
right? Then there's another column where you get dividends, right?
Okay.
So dividends, because we use mutual companies, that's I see. I want to be an owner.
Mm.
I don't want to be a profit center,
Mm-hmm.
right? Term is a profit center, right? Universal life is a profit center because you're trying to get the up to the market without the downside risk. That's another type of insurance. I'm talking about contract wealth
Right.
that I can access with a fax or a phone call and get my money in 3-4 days. Okay. And so what you're doing is you're collateralizing the contract, right? So let's say you have 20,000 cash value. When you take a loan, you're not borrowing your own money because people say, well, why am I paying interest to borrow my own money? You're not borrowing your own money. The insurance company is loaning you money from their general fund. They're using your contract, your cash value as collateral.
Yep. Got it.
That's why you have uninterrupted compounding because the money has never come out.
Right.
And so now what can you do with it? Whatever you want. We just teach people I help people create their amortization schedules. If you take a loan, you're going to get a call from me. If I haven't helped you do it, okay, great. I just a client borrowed 80 grand to do some deal in Costa Rica 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So all right, she's kind of smart, but it's like, all right, what's the plan here? How are you going to pay this back? What's the asset that you're buying? What is your payback?
What's the
plan?
return?
What's the return? What's the payback plan? No, if you borrow, like if you do hard money, you borrowing their money, you have to pay them back.
Right.
So you have to calculate when you're getting the deal, you got to calculate the mortgage payment.
Right.
So I make people calculate that. See, this is what I mean. If you use the policy, it gives you a framework because you have to. So in the book, it's called EVA, economic value added. So you got to have a hurdle rate. So if you knew money costs you 4 or 5%, you have to make sure that you're dealing with some assets you're buying where there's enough revenue to pay back the cost of funds. Because there's always a cost of funds,
Which is the policy loan, right? How much does
right.
it cost to borrow?
But it's with whatever. But I'm saying the policy enforces that discipline. Where a lot of times, if you're using your cash, you don't treat your capital as if it has a cost. So that goes back to the early principle: you finance everything you buy. So you have to treat all capital. There's always a cost of capital.
Right. Okay. So it's almost like have you ever heard of M1 Finance? It's like this stock broker-ish where you could do a partial price of a stock and it still could gain.
No, or not
Yeah.
not in that
So it's not like your
language.
typical Webull or your what's the big one? Not Cash App, but it'll come to mind. But it's not like Webull or Thinkitrade. It's like not your typical stock brokerages. What they do is in M1 Finance is that you have this pie chart, and then let's say you have $100. You want to put 20% in Tesla, and then another 10% in Apple, and another 10% in SPY 500, and that $100 will be separated based on the percentage size. And then whatever the gains is how much you invested in. The thing about M1, what I like about it is like I'll put all my stocks investments in there, and then I could borrow against it and use the stocks as the collateral. And then the stocks could, increase in value, but I still could borrow, I think, up to 40 or 50% of the value.
So when I teach banking, one of the things I teach, you don't need a life insurance policy to bank. Okay. Banking is a concept. So you could bank with CDs. You could bank with savings accounts. You could bank with brokerage accounts, with margin accounts.
Yeah.
You could even bank with your 401k. One of the things I'll show people in an example is that, so there's 12 characteristics of the ideal place to store your liquidity. So the brokerage account has 5 of the 12.
Okay.
Insurance has 11 of the 12. 401ks have 4 of the 12, right? And so the only advantage that life insurance doesn't have is the money goes in after tax, so it's kind of like a big Roth IRA. So you could do that. See, here's the other thing. I form a clear delineation between saving and investing. And everybody's always trying to push those two together. They're two separate things.
Sure.
Okay. So, but you could collateralize it. I don't like collateralizing volatile assets, right? Because if it goes down, you could get a margin call. Yes. And you got to come up with the money or sell the share. So that's why I don't like you, but you could do it.
It's uncertainty for you.
Yeah. I don't like uncertainty. So, because see, you don't need, that's why I like whole life insurance, because I don't need the policy to do backflips. I just need to be there when I want it. right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to invest in things, I'm going to take risks in things I understand, right? Whether it's real estate, whether it's investing in my business, whether it's investing in a marketing campaign, because I talked about the rules of personal finance. Well, here are my 3 rules of investing. Invest in what you know or invest in knowing before you throw money at it, right?
Right.
Number 2, invest in what you can control. Can you influence the outcome, the performance? Does your knowledge, does it cash flow?
Mm.
Okay. And rule number 3, don't chase returns
Why?
because can you control whether markets go up or down?
Good point.
See, because that's not even, here's the thing. All right, so let's go back to my definition of investing. See, because words matter, right? So have you heard of, I know you heard of him, Warren Buffett.
Yes.
Have you heard of Benjamin Graham?
Value investing
Yes,
book.
right. So that's their Graham value investor disciples,
Yep.
if you will,
Yeah,
right?
a mentor.
So the first chapter in the book of The Intelligent Investor
Yes.
is investing versus speculation.
Yes.
Okay. So in the first chapter, in the first paragraph, he goes, an investment is something with, I'm paraphrasing, you have upon thorough investigation, you deploy your capital where you have, number 1, safety of principal and a reasonable opportunity to make a profit. If it doesn't fit that definition, you are speculating.
Mm.
See, so people say, I want to invest. So I said, well, let me tell you what I think an investment is. And let's compare it to what we're talking about. So we're on the same page.
Yep.
And so most people, if you use that definition, are speculating.
Mm.
They're not investing, they're speculating. So I don't have a problem with you speculating. Just know you're speculating.
Right.
And speculate from a position where, okay, you've got a plan, because you have to have a financial plan that works no matter what. That's the main thing I try to teach. You got to have, ideal plan works regardless. And it's got to work when markets are up, markets are down, markets go sideways. Interest rates are up, interest rates are down, interest rates go sideways. You die, you get sick, you get disabled, you get sued. Your plan's still supposed to work under all circumstances. And
Right.
so most people don't build plans like that. They're chasing returns, right? That's why my foundation is manage cash flow, save 15%, maximum protection. That's
Safety.
safety.
Yeah.
Because you have to build your house on rock, not on sand.
Yeah.
Most people just chasing returns because that's exciting. They can't, but they're really speculating because they don't know why. I had a cousin. This is like Christmas. We shared Christmas Eve parts because I got some crypto.
That's already speculation, right?
So she got, I made $500, $400 or $500. I was like, oh, that's great. Why? Why what? Why did the money go up?
Mm.
No clue. Okay, well, that told that story. I said, so were you investing or were you speculating?
It's definitely speculating. 'Cause
Speculating.
he doesn't know what's going on. Why is Bitcoin rising up now? Or why is it going down in the next few months or something like that?
Yeah. And so that's why I like people to understand economics. Economics is major. So Bitcoin is flat, but gold is up to $3,000 an ounce.
Yeah.
Why is that?
When a recession hits, gold go up.
Right. And so people fight recessions. Recession is really the cure of malinvestment. But see, nobody wants their money to go down. See, so this is where when I started reading things like the Economics in One Lesson and the Creature from Jekyll Island and the Adventures of Never.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's like, see, somebody red pilled me. Right. So but what happens is, see, you gotta see if you, Nelson Nash just said to me, he said, listen, if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do.
Mm.
And so most people just have these blinders on. They see one thing. I try to help people think from a macro economic standpoint so that you can see the entire playing field. And now you kind of can, protect your personal economy. What is their hyperinflation? Well, then how do I respond to that? How do I set my sail?
Right.
And so that's kind of how I think. So in a person's financial life, I'm the macro manager and I'm really the defensive coordinator. Right. I'm defense championship.
That's what happens to Eagles too.
That's right. Defense wins championship. We had good offense, but defense won championship.
Yeah.
And so, because there's 2 schools of thought when it comes to finance. One is, especially when you're talking to like a typical person in the financial industry, most people are looking for better investment products that pay a higher rate of return.
Sure.
But the only way to do that is to take more risk.
Yes.
Which I view as probability of loss. That's just me. I'm conservative, right? I'm old. And I have found over the last 35 years that there is more opportunity to be had in minimizing your losses than there's trying to pick winners.
Mm.
And so my goal is efficiency. See, most people, one of the things that I do is most people will transfer, they're involved in transferring their wealth to people that create the situations, control the outcomes so that they profit. I call that the financial industrial complex, right? And so what happens is, so a transfer means money is leaving your asset column going to somebody else's, right? So if you don't have good tax planning, for example, and you pay a tax you didn't have to pay, that's a wealth transfer. But what you have to do, let's say it's $20,000. Well, it's not the $20,000 that you just wrote a check to the Treasury Department. It's that money at interest spiraling out to the future. That's opportunity cost. So if you're an investor and let's say you could get 7% or 10%, 12%, that means your money, that 20,000 would double every 10 years or every 6 years. You've lost that money.
Mm.
And so you have to see, this is what I do. I teach people about wealth transfer. So after managing cash flow, there's like 10. I'm gonna name the other five, right? Which are how you pay your mortgage,
Right.
okay? Because a lot of these people this woman's like, "Oh, I want to pay extra on my mortgage," and they're trying to 15-year mortgage. I said, "What's your interest rate?" 3.3%. I was like, "Are you?" What did I tell her? I said, I had a mentor from Louisiana. He says, "Look, don't hurry to a whooping, right? Don't." So it's no reason to pay the house off.
Right.
Okay. What's the rate of return on equity? 0. Does paying extra in the mortgage make the house go up in value? No. Does it make the payment go down? No. So you're turning your house into a qualified plan, meaning you got to qualify to get to the equity.
Mm.
Okay. 2, taxes. Number 1, right? So if you don't have a good tax strategist, most people, like if you just have a high W-2, like they need to do real estate because only thing you're taught to do is give, see if you can give the charity, max out your 401k. But even with the 401k, you're just deferring taxes,
Correct.
right? And the more accurate word is postponing taxes.
Yep.
And then you have to ask yourself, well, do I think in the future will taxes be higher, lower, or the same? Right? And then if you think, I don't know, then I just pull up usdebtclock.org, right?
Debt.org.
And you see the $36 trillion deficit.
Yeah.
And, I was like, what do you think? And your money's trapped in qualified plans where they control the rules.
Mm.
Okay. The third one is how they fund qualified plans. So to me, past the match, up to the match, okay, maybe. And then past that, I think there are other things to do. Like past the match, I would fund the whole life.
What is past the match?
So let's say, good question. So let's say you're working a job and you have a 401k, which is a qualified plan, or 403b if you work for a nonprofit.
Yep.
And you can contribute whatever. Let's say you put in 10%, but they'll match you up to 5. So if you put in,
Like employer contributions.
employer contributions, that's the match.
Okay.
Right? So my people will fund up to the match.
Mm-hmm.
And what the math really does is just pay the taxes due on the back end, okay? Because it adds to your accumulation.
Got it.
But you're just creating a bigger tax liability. So it makes sense. So we look at it, could there be a more efficient place to put this capital?
Mm.
So, and I'll let y'all figure it out. But that's the question. See, I don't try to tell people what to do. I just try to get people to think.
Right.
Okay. So qualified plans, how they pay for college. So 529 plans, the trust, we call them ultimate accounts, like what you're talking about. Because they're silos. You're putting money, mostly in mutual funds, where you can't touch them till the child is 18. So I don't like that. I don't like putting money in places where you only have one use products.
Right.
And because I have a 13-year-old, I have a 24-year-old, and I have a 21-year-old daughter, right? There's so many things that we needed money for.
Right.
Between, they were running track, I'm paying her track camp, $3,500 summer camps to, soccer tournaments and all that kind of stuff. Like, did you going to need Sweet 16 parties? I'm having flashbacks.
Three Switsies.
Right. One didn't like one a big one. I had one, our first one, the best social butterfly, had like 200 kids there.
Wow.
Okay. And
It's like a wedding right there.
yeah, like a wedding. I'm great. Start policy number 7 because I'm mad. I think I might have a wedding in the next 3-4 years.
Yeah,
Right.
right, yeah.
I was already always like, we need to put another 20 grand a year in policy because we need to make sure we had a capital. But and that money when you do your FAFSA is visible, right?
Mhm.
Where the money I have in my life insurance is not.
Why is that? And
It's I don't know, just works that way.
okay.
It's so now if I get my expected parent contribution wherever that number comes up, I just take a policy loan, pay it, keep it moving, and pay it back. Over the course of the year out of revenue from our business, and then I'll just recycle the same money over again for 4 years.
So what the policy loan, what's the typical interest on that if you work?
4%.
4%. That's across the board, doesn't matter what.
Well, it depends on the company.
Okay.
The company I use 4%.
Got it. And
Interest only.
interest only.
Interest only and unstructured payments. So there's no set payback plan. You create your own payback plan.
Interest is so okay.
Think about that. Okay.
Okay.
What if you had $100,000 you could get to with a phone call or a fax, get the money, and then not have a set payment plan, is interest only. And, only question they're going to ask you is how much you want, and you want a check, you want us to wire to your account. Not, let me see your financial statements, how's your credit, none of that kind of stuff. It's like, boom.
But has it been 4% despite the
Yeah.
economic?
Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's paid dividends throughout mostly all good mutual companies have paid a dividend for the last 100 years. So that's, the guarantee rate, and depends on the company, but it's like 3%.
Mm,
Then you get a dividend for owning the company. Dividends are not guaranteed, but, most of these companies haven't missed one in like 120 years.
got it. So you're able to put money in these policy. You take out the money at 4%. And obviously, if you want to spend it, that's on you. But also, if you want to invest it, you got to make more than a 4%. You could private lend it at like 10%. And
Think about that.
Got
You
double the money.
private lend it at 8. That's 100% return.
right.
That's what I mean by knowing the financial physics. You're always chasing returns, but you've got to look at the real numbers. So if
Yeah.
you could get 10, 12%, yeah, you're doing better than 100% return. And your money's over here in the other bucket still making money.
Mm,
And it's insurance. And it's growing in a tax favored account.
got it. Is it tax deductible?
It is not
Mm.
tax deductible. Because that's part of the advantage. It goes in after tax. So think of it like a big Roth, Roth IRA with more benefits.
So you get taxed at first, and then eventually it's
Because when you pay an
Good.
insurance premium, it's already been taxed. That's already taxable money. So you never get taxed again.
but the returns, it's still taxed, right? If you were let's say you're borrowing against 4%, and then you're lending it out to someone else at 12%. That
That gets taxed.
that gets taxed.
You can deduct your 4 for the cost of money off the 12. So now you only pay tax on the 8.
What are some
Talk to your tax professional. I'm not giving you tax or investment advice.
educational purposes?
Yes, educational purposes.
What are some creative strategies that you see or that you advise other people to use their policy loan for?
I try not to give advice, actually, but I've learned stuff from my clients. That thing about go on vacation, use your policy loan, and pay yourself back.
Mhm.
You get the point. That came from a client.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got clients that buy cars, and before it was hire car just shut down, but it put them on Turo. So buy a car, 10, 12,000 with a policy loan, and then they'll put it on Turo. Well, let's say Turo. It was hire car was my example, but as of last month, I think they shut down. Well, I had a guy bought his first car for like $6,000, put it on hire car for like, what did he put on there?
It's for people to rent out
Yeah,
cars,
right.
right?
So
And they
he used it by
days
asset per day, and he would get gig workers, and he was making $1,000 a month
yeah.
on the car, right?
Wow.
And I've got people that buy notes, mortgage notes,
Yeah.
discount notes. They'll buy mortgage notes, tax liens, vending machines.
Wow. So you could do businesses as well.
Yeah, businesses can own it. So if you have a business and it's making money, you can buy the insurance on key employees where you own it as the business owner. They do it all the time. Banks do it, BOLI, corporations, COLI. It's like, this is not new, guys. This is new to us. Okay. And so what happens is you can buy it on your key people. You can do buy sell agreements, and you can split it with the employee, or you can just own it, because what happens is you can use it to fund their severance, to pay for bonuses to fund their vacations, take a policy loan, and out of your revenue, you pay the loan back. So now you've got a perpetual fund. Because you can own it personally, and then you can loan it to your business, and that way you get your money back out of your business. Or let's say you loan money to your real estate business, which should be separate.
Right.
So now you act as a bank. So if you loan money to acquire this apartment building, then you should have the corporation, the real estate business, pay you back at like market rates.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is basically like cash. It's technically it's like cash
On steroids.
Yeah, because I was just at a self-directed IRA thing, and obviously it's great that you're using some of your retirement money, roll it over into self-directed IRA, and you could invest it or lend it out to someone. But then if you want to invest or even lending it, there's a lot of restrictions. It's like you can't do it to a business. You can't buy your own business, for example. And I'm just thinking of this whole life policy thing, and it's
It gives
literally
you more flexibility. I think if you have a lot of capital, self-directed can be good. I don't love it for real estate,
interesting.
for buying like real estate. And so this came from, you heard Tom Wheelwright.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was at a conference in not Scottsdale. Where were we at?
Mostly probably.
No, it was somewhere, Park City, Utah.
Oh, you
conference in Park City, Utah.
yeah.
And he says, why would you do that? Why would you take a tax favored asset and stuff it inside a tax deferred asset? Because if you buy the property, I think you maybe get 50%. You can't get a lot of, or you got to pay for cash, or there's a bunch of stuff there. I'm not an expert. I know people sell it because they sell it. That's where people have a lot of capital, not to step on toes, and then they want to come on my show. Oh, self-directed, you can buy real estate, and I cut them off. I won't let them do that. I like it for notes. I like it for private lending. I like it for, what are those things called? What are the things when you buy into apartment building stuff?
Oh, syndication.
Syndications.
Yep.
I like it for that kind of stuff. And even if it's a real estate syndication, not so much, because again, you give up the pass-through write-offs that you could get.
Right.
Okay. And where notes are taxable. So I like doing it in there. But real, I said, why would you do that? He says, you're giving up all the advantages of buying real estate by buying it in self-directed. So that's where all your money is. Okay. But I would fund the policy, and then I would use the policy for that. So you get the banking, you get the acquire it, you get all the write-offs, and your money's still growing. Where if you do a self-directed, you got to do a letter of intent. Right. So you borrowed 50,000. Well, you bought it into a syndication for 50,000. It's self-directed. Shows the 100,000 you have in there, and 50,000 is the promissory note, but it's not in there. It's in that.
Right.
Right. So if I had the capital and a policy, I could have my cake and eat it too.
Got it. What advice?
I hope you are staying with me. I thought we were going into the weeds.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking at the time, and we're good. You make my life easier. Oh yeah. So you're very knowledgeable. So what advice do you give to your clients about, like, well, you don't give advice, but leaving a legacy, because you're doing whole life, and then obviously you have three daughters and your family.
So I think that's the goal. I teach. So the end of the movie when I work with people, right, is what I call the 4 pillars of a strong personal economy. So, and pillar number 4 is what you talked about. Well, I'll give you the first 4. Pillar number 1 is freedom from debt to others. So meaning not get out of debt, but you be the bank. If you're going to be in debt, you should own the banking system that you're in debt to. Okay. Right. Pillar number 2 is ready cash when you need it for emergency, for opportunities. That's the 6-12 months of liquidity.
Right.
Pillar number 3 is not the job of the policy or product. So I say passive income you don't have to work for and you cannot live. I like to say asset-based income, because there are people that tout this strategy, tax-free retirement and pulling money out the insurance, living tax-free. I don't like that. So I don't want that associated with a product. I don't think there's any product that will take you to glory in itself, because I think it comes from your knowledge and ingenuity. And then the 4th pillar is a legacy of wealth and the wisdom to go along with that. See, because I've seen 5 different death claims of like just under $1 million, and the people went through all it because they got the money, helped them get the money, and they ghosted me. Right. I can see like 3 different occasions where it happened, and they went through the money in like 2.5 years.
Wow.
Don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And so, because the fool and their money is soon parted. So you have to, legacy it starts with life insurance, right? maximum protection with your life insurance. So now what happens is you start there. So you begin with the end in mind. So if you start there, now the end is done. So now you can work backwards to build your empire, your business, your real estate,
Right.
and you begin. So now we do. So it's basically the foundation is life insurance, a trust,
Mm.
and a pour over will, right? To get whatever the trust didn't get, you get a revocable
Revocable
trust.
trust. Yeah.
And so we have a partner called shout out Legacy Lock that helps. We do that. So we help. That's part of principle two, protection,
Protection.
right?
Yeah.
So we take people through a process where we don't leave any, we what is it? No stones unturned. I want to touch just it's like when to touch on it. But I told people, look, here's the end of the movie. So you work with me. This is what we're doing. I want the 4 pillars and this is where you integrate plain cash flow,
Mm.
family meetings, which we're starting to do. And, having I'm working at this. I got this idea from Garrett, a colleague of mine, Garrett Gunnarsson. He's a family constitution. He's the one that wrote what the Rockefellers do.
Oh.
And so he's another guy. I was at a conference with him in October, so, but that thing. So we try to give people books, a library of stuff to read to kind of, all right, because you eat a pizza one slice at a time. So,
Right.
we're you're
Trying to just hit him with a
talking to me is like, on a show like this, like drinking from a fire hose, right? So you got to slow down and go back, watch my show, watch my YouTube channel for you want to get more of the madness that is Curtis. I still talk as fast, but you can go through more content. And but legacy is everything. But you grow to that. A lot of people want to start there. You that's not the beginning. That's
Mm.
the end, right? But you build it as you go because you want to enjoy your life. People say they're 25. I'm saving for retirement. Really? I want you to save. I don't retire. I don't think retirement is a good goal. Retirement is an agricultural term that means to put out of use.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right. And or to withdraw, right? And so I want you to I try to have people set a better goal, which is financial freedom, which is a capacity,
Mm.
right? And so can you do that in a decade or less if you're focused right? That where we met, most people in that room at the meetup,
Right.
right? And are thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not thinking about 65. And so part of it, you got to get a community
Yeah.
that will support that won't look at you like you're crazy. I was in this real estate RIA that I'm part of, Better Success League. And
That's a good group.
yeah. And so I was with somebody in the back and he was like, yeah, we were talking. He said, yeah, I made 50 on this. It wasn't even, I don't know if it was a flip, it was a wholesale deal,
Okay. 50 grand.
which is
That's pretty good.
pretty good. I think it's too much. You got to leave meat on the bone for the final end user, but if you get it, but I said, so that now think about that. If he was with what I call civilians,
Mm.
right, with regular people,
Right.
with jobs, that what?
50
That's a
grand.
rip off.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, that's great. How many of those could you do a year? So you need to be in a group that pushes you, that encourages that. They're not going to,
100%. Yeah.
and that's part of it. See, because it's your association. See, early on, even in high school, I recognized that I didn't call it that, but the power of association. So when I wanted to play college basketball, all I hung around
Was basketball players.
for players that were at a certain level that were trying to play college ball.
Yeah.
I didn't hang out in the corners. I realized the grades I need to have and the SAT score they need to have.
Sure.
And so if you're an investor or a good business owner, you have to get around people that stretch you, like-minded people. In fact, people that are better, playing a bigger game than you. Like I always try to be the dumbest, brokest person in the room.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. But it's gonna be hard in your shoes.
Look, they're out there. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I mean, I felt the same way as an entrepreneur, right? We feel like we're in a black sheeps.
Yeah.
We got to find these mastermind groups, these people. Because if you go to a meetup and then there's the real estate meetup that you can find online, I'm pretty sure they're everywhere, depending where you are. I like to say it's like 80% of them is just trying to dip their waters in the toe, right? That one deal.
Free.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I was probably making $1 million. He goes, I was told about my idea to start with. He says, he's in it. His is like 50 grand a year.
Yeah.
But you pay for the people that aren't there.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other 20% is probably the hosts, probably the panels and maybe the support of the hosts, and they're the ones who's killing it, and they're the ones that you got to know. But eventually, there's only so little of them, and when you're in Philly, there's only so much people, especially in real estate, that are sustainable, as opposed to the other 80% where they just want to try things out. And
So you gotta travel. I'm like, I was in one in Florida. I was at the infinite banking one in Florida
yeah,
in March, and then somewhere I went to Grant Cardone's thing in March.
yeah,
And so I was at a table, this guy had a $50 million AVHC company,
that's insane.
and another guy that's a big, his name's Mark Kohler, big lawyer, tax lawyer and CPA tax rate. He's got a big channel
Wow.
on whatever. So shout out Mark if you hear this, because I'm trying to get your publicist to get you on my show. He said he's going to come on my show. So, but you got to get around, and sometimes you got to pay to be in those rooms.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, that's sometimes you have to
Put
pay.
your hand over you in those rooms. I started paying for some mastermind group, and I mean, it's a bit chunk, yeah, but
Scary.
but I was like, I hope I get something out of it, because it's like you're paying money.
Listen, you gonna get. I do. So when I went to the grand thing, I was like, all right. I had on my little journal. All right, met 5 people today. Met 5 people that, the 3 days are there. So I met like 19 good people. I already talked to 6 of them
That's awesome.
where we're moving forward. So you have to track that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I have this thing, and I use Notion for all my stuff. It's just a table. It's like an all-in-one workspace kind of. And then I have this called like business Rolodex. And then what I do is, the last time I met with someone or contact with someone, I have my assistant kind of add them in based on my calendar. And then I would have a frequency. It's like when to reach out. Is it quarterly?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I add
annually.
okay.
And then there's like a format. It's kind of like an Excel format, but it's also a Notion format. It's like, if let's say I met Curtis at January 1st, and then just reach out to him like biannual, like every 6 months,
Right.
it'll trigger. It's like June 1st, reach out to Curtis, and I'm like, oh, okay, nice. Let's catch up.
Because the fortune is in the follow up. You got to develop relationships.
Exactly.
You don't, meet somebody and marry them on the first date. Right. You
100%.
have to stay in touch with them because they want to see if you're real, if you're going to be there,
Mm,
and you have to show up. And, so I show up with, articles, the show every week for 5 years, and you just got to be there. So like, I'm going to be there. They get emails from me 3 times a week, Curtis is there. So if we don't even talk, I have people that come to my workshop. They just popped into one of my seminars one day. I didn't talk to him in like 4 years, but it didn't feel like it to him because he was following my stuff and he heard me every week.
yeah. So what's next for Curtis? Like obviously are killing it in a game, right? In terms of follow-ups, you're going to these conferences, you have a lot of experience on your belt. Are you reaching towards that future self of yours that you wrote? A couple
I'm
years ago?
always so my goal, business goals with Practical Wealth is I'm working with a coach right now. So his best year in practice doing what I'm doing, it was like $5 million, working 3 days a week and only 40 weeks out the year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working towards that. So I can double my income and double my time off professionally. And our goal is I want to be the premier holistic financial planning, do holistic financial planning, not financial planner, that's a designation, but financial holistic planning. I call it principles-based planning in North America. So that's our goal, that, and I'm starting to develop a team of agents, and I'm,
Right.
they're like the Marine Corps to work with me because I'm not letting you out there half-butted. Yeah, you're going to know your stuff if you open your mouth and you associate with me. So I'll play that. And so just from that standpoint, and then we're working on, I've created another company called Practical Wealth Education,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like my intellectual property of just some of the ideas. I'm pretty good at marketing, and so I've people are asking me, well, how do you get all these appointments? How do you, with 3 people? I was number 14 in the nation at my insurance company with me and 2 assistants and a transaction coordinator, and all virtual, and do business, we do business nationally. Well, how do you do that? Because it's transferable to other businesses. So I was like, people go, yeah, teach me. And I said, oh, I guess I should develop an offer around this. And so that kind of stuff. I finished kind of the rough first draft of my book.
Okay.
And so I think by the
Is
end,
this your first book?
first book,
Okay.
and probably I've got like 5 in me, I'm told. So
What's the book about? Is it influent banking? Yeah,
like, you be the bank. I think I might change it, but how to, kind
Be
of
your
go
own
against the
banker.
financial. Yeah, it's so much of that. Like it's really like that's the working title, but I'm going to change that. So I don't, I forget
It's
the
a draft.
tagline right now.
It's a
It's a
draft.
draft. It's a draft, and then I'm adding to it, and I want to, adding some pictures to it, and because it's really, it's like 50 pages right now. So, but my wife likes short books. Like, oh, you don't need to write War and Peace, and but it's just more to it. And then I develop a workbook to go with it
Right.
because I'm a financial educator.
Mm.
I see myself as a financial educator. So, like when I speak, I try to hopefully people have more questions than they have answers
Mm.
because
Just
that
the
means
question
that
is where you
the
at.
question is where you're at, and that means you're starting to think. Now, wait for somebody to tell you what to think, and that's then I feel like I'm now cracking your, getting you to think and let
Start.
go of paradigms that may not be serving you,
Right.
but that's all you're
It's
doing.
not it's not just information coming in, but also just trying to make connections into the information.
Yes,
That's
because your money. I tell people all the time, it's your money. It ain't Curtis's money, so it can't be more important to me than it is to you. So you're going to think. So if I give you this, well, sell you because I make people buy it. So I gifted it to you, but I make people buy it because people pay attention.
sure.
But I want to be responsible for creating more economically independent families in North America that are secure. That where because the principles are, I teach principles that help our clients become and remain financially free. So I don't want you to be a flash in the pan.
Right. It's not just one time shop. It's about the
I
maintenance that
want you to
comes to.
stay there, and then I want you to pass on to your kids intact.
Mm.
So that I don't feel like I'm just starting to really pull all that stuff together where I can articulate it. And so I think I can still get better
Yeah.
at that and getting our message out there. So with next for me, I just want to get bigger and through books, through getting our intellectual, creating like media. Like so I got the podcast, I
Yeah.
need a book, I need this, and just teaching. And we're going to probably in June, we're gonna do our first 5-day challenge, be the bank challenge.
Being a bank challenge.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And because it's funny because people like I'll do a workshop that's like, an hour 40, no, like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
Tops. But Nelson Nash taught a 10-hour, 2-day workshop. So it takes about that long to get it. Like you need to read the book a couple of times. And I had to go through the workshop twice before I was like, oh, I missed that. And because it's like, it's not about insurance. It's about how you think. It's about Austrian economics. It's about controlling the banking function. Most people don't know what that is. So you really have to let go of what you think you know.
Mm. Be vulnerable and just take everything in like a sponge,
Yes,
basically.
you do. And you like, I question, can I get better at this? I'm pretty good, I'm told. And I still I'll talk to my mentor. Do I know this stuff? Am I any good?
Get the imposter syndrome part, right? Yeah, I don't know. If I'm an educator, I want to know.
Yeah, if I do, I want to know everything. I don't have that much of imposter syndrome. I'm kind of confident. My coach says you need to step into your authority. So when I start talking, it's like, all right,
I'm here.
and I'll read other people's books. And I was like, I know all this. That's it. I know this stuff,
Yeah.
and I close my eyes and I say it all the time, but I had to put it on paper.
Right.
And, even with y'all, with what you're doing and as you're thinking about stuff, the purpose of learning is not knowing, it's mastery.
It's understanding.
It's understanding, mastery. So I might do a workshop and I don't have time doing it often, but if I do a youth workshop, let's say like 10th grade up, I'm giving them the same talk I give the parents.
Mm.
Right? Because it's not that complicated. And if I can't get it across to them, I don't understand it.
Right.
And it's not about how smart I am. It's not what I say, is what you hear.
Mm.
And, can you act on it? I think that's my superpower. Like I'm good at I'm told I break stuff down so they understand it and then they're willing to take action.
Yeah, that is your superpower. I mean, you're going through these complex. I mean, insurance can be complex, right? That's just a perspective, but you're able to break things down for a person who is very new to it and completely understand it as if they were like explain like I'm 5. All right.
It's good to know. Yeah. That's what I try to do. I try to work at how can I say this better? How can I say this simpler? How can I be more succinct?
Yeah.
That's genius.
And that's what genius people do, like Albert Einstein or even Elon Musk, right? He was able to solve this complex equation of how to build a freaking rocket and then just dumb it down and then creating his own company and, explain to other people. My kind of second to final question is that you're doing podcasts, you're going through conferences, you're teaching seminars, you're engaging with so many people, students, and things like that. But you mentioned that you want to lower like your working days.
Mhm.
How are you doing that? How are you maximizing your productivity? What is your kind of routine now, and how is that going to change later?
It's funny because I like working. Like, it's
It's like a game to you.
it's like a game, and then, like, so when I go to conferences, like, when my high school, my favorite vacation was going to basketball camp.
Mm,
Like, I couldn't think of nothing I'd rather do than play ball all day long, watch basketball film all day long. I was in heaven. So when I go to conferences, it's like basketball camp.
mm.
I wanna talk shop. We might be having you get the best stuff at the bar at the meeting after the meeting, but we're still talking shop.
Yeah, yeah,
And sometimes I'm a little buzzed, and I gotta remember what I
yeah.
let me talk into the phone and remember what he know. It was brilliant. What I say?
Record that.
Right, record that real quick so I remember what we talked about. Oh, but what happened was you wanna be able to work all the time because you want to enjoy your life because I believe I study. I'm not in it. I may join it, but I know about as much about as anybody that's not a member, a strategic coach. And one of the things Dan Silva says, if you as an entrepreneur, you can't double your income until you double your time off.
You can't double your income until you can double your time off.
Because if we're driving all this stuff, right? So you have to rest and recharge. So last year we went on like 4 trips,
Mm,
so I work hard and then I play. So I like to travel. Like, so, I want to trip with my insurance company in Hawaii. So we're going to Hawaii in June. So
mm.
I'll do something else. But now I'm focused. I'm a monomaniac on a mission, and then I'm like play hard. So when Dora's like, "Oh, I wanna go kayaking, we're gonna do this, we're gonna go hiking and go to the waterfalls," and, all that stuff. So I try to stay in shape, so I work out 3, 4, 5 days a week so that I can do that stuff because a lot of stuff I wanna do is physical.
Mm,
So I like so I work to create the life I want, to travel, to leave a legacy to my kids, to be able to, have freedom. Because I see what that drives me is freedom. So that's the
all
next
right.
there. So I like the idea because I've coached my kids in soccer and basketball, so I want to be able to be present
For them.
for them,
Right.
right? And so you work to build a business that works so you don't work all the time. Because a lot of times people have a business, but you on vacation, you're not present, right? Because you're still thinking about, all right, well, we gotta make payroll.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
take
You're still thinking
calls.
about the
They're
business.
still thinking about I mean, I still think about the business, but when I go away, because I still wake up at like 5 in the morning, I go work out, I'm journaling.
Sure.
So, but then when we start hanging out, I've already got all that stuff out of my system.
Mm.
And so I come back fired up because I got a journal full of new ideas I want to try for the next quarter because it's 12-week year. So every quarter is a year.
Mm.
And so I work that and then I try to, okay, well, I want to go on vacation every year. So that's 1 vacation a quarter. So that's 4 vacations a year. So it's some of that is free days where, all right, I'm trying to work it to where I only work like I have. Right now I don't work Saturdays, I don't work Sundays. I will try to make my Mondays a admin day,
Okay.
maybe a couple clients, and then I'll work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll see. I'm trying to work where I don't see any clients on Friday, and then I might do some catch-all admin stuff, and I'll record. And then I want to be done by like 2 o'clock, and then, you know,
What what
I'm
what
done.
what's usually like a work day for you? It's like
It's about so I,
trips.
I might see my first client at 9. So I don't my assistants handle my calendar.
Right.
So if you'll call me, you'll get Irish or come to call you. They will set up a strategy session, and then they have my calendar. I try to knock it off by really 5 or 6, but I have people on the West Coast, so I'll go to 6:30 if they're West Coast and they're listening to this 2 days.
So it's like one-on-ones, a seminar,
Both,
class.
but
Okay.
both seasons I say one-on-ones.
Okay.
But I'm talking about my one-on-ones, and I'll do a weekly group thing
Yep.
where I'll drive a lot of now what I'm doing is I'm working to since I say the same thing on a one-on-one, this is where with my coach will become more efficient. Listen, if you say the same thing every time, then
Yeah. Start recording
yeah,
and then it's just
recording it, but I will do it live. The Rush says do it live for a year before you record it. So I'm working at that and driving new people, referrals. Let's say, if y'all call me from the show, I'm very educational. So even when somebody calls me, I give them stuff so they know what to expect when they call me,
yeah.
you know. And what else do I do? I try to, but I'll start at 9, but I You ever see the Cole? We talk about Black Mamba and how he works out.
Yeah,
Right? So I try to
they
do that.
start doing
Right.
early.
So I get up at 5. I work out. I will read or practice, or read for about a half hour. I will think of a way to say this thing cheaper or something I'm thinking about learning how to do.
Right.
And then I'll kind of plan out my day. I may do some client prep if I need to like think through, because you got to allow time to, when I see people's financials. See, one of the things I also realize is my superpower. I'm like, you see the Matrix?
Yes.
So at the end of the Matrix, when Neo could see the Matrix,
Yep.
after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad,
You could see the Matrix.
I could see the Matrix, but the Matrix means I could see financial statements and everything.
Mm,
Right. So that asset, income, expense, asset, liability, the balance sheets.
Yep.
So if I'm talking to you and we're talking about your finance, I literally see your life running, the money running through your life, through your financial statements.
mm,
Like it just jumps out at me like a moving picture.
Right.
And I could draw it to you on a yellow pad within 6 or 7 questions. Let me show you what you're doing. Money comes in, you got this, you got that, and here's what we need to change. And I didn't think that was a big deal, but then when I would tell people about it, like, "What are you talking about?" No, that's not normal. And, so that's what I do. That's why I'll go into cash flow management and budgeting more so than most of ours. Don't we bother with that?
Mm.
Because to me, that's where the
That's
rub
where you start.
That's where you start.
Damn.
That's where most wealth is lost. And so, but it's tedious. See, most people focus on accumulation. How much you got? We can do better. Why don't you move that money here to us? So, because they're just focused on your accumulated money and they want assets under management. I want to create financial freedom. So you have to get them under control. So now what happens is, one of the things I'm doing is I don't have to see everybody. So I'm working at only my ideal client gets on my calendar.
Got it.
Okay.
Makes
That's
sense.
where
Okay.
I might keep it like 4 a day.
Like the most important
The
client.
most important, they're coachable, that send me their financial stuff, that are, I don't care about well, I do care a little about what you meant, but I don't care about your assets under management. What I care is I want you friendly. You should be making, 75,000 and up, because I know that you're wasting money. 100,000, 150,000. I know you're making money, but you're broke.
Right.
All right. But your broke is kind of self-inflicted because you're following the status quo. So you're broke because you have the transfers,
Mm.
you know, debt and financing and overfunding your 401k and over with 401k, you're over withholding your taxes, no tax strategy. See, so I can see 4 things where I create $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month of new cash flow. And I just want to save her $800 a month in like 20 minutes. I just looked at how she was paying her debt. I said, well, rearrange this and this should free up about $800 a month for you.
Yeah.
And those type of things jump. Once you know what you're looking at, it's like you can go to a dentist and they're looking at your x-ray. You don't know what you're looking at, but they see
The
everything.
Matrix.
The matrix. So I see that, like, when I read people's financial statements, it's like a doctor looking at an x-ray.
Got it.
In fact, I got the money doctor.
And the money doctor, the educator,
Right.
all the above. Curtis, I'm a man of many masters. Curtis, where can people find more about you?
So the best way is to go to the Practical Wealth Show on YouTube. You go to practicalwealth.net, which is our channel. And then I got a gift for your gift. So this is a good way to gift for your listeners. If you will text Be the Bank, all one word, BETHEBANK, to 55444, I'll send you one of my favorite reports called The Value of Liquidity.
The value of liquidity.
And so if you text that, you should get that in your inbox, or just go to my site, or you can find me on what's that thing called, Instagram.
What's it? You're so busy. Social media is not.
It's not 5 people. Who not how, right?
Who not?
And but you go to my link tree, and I'll have our calendar. So if you'd like to schedule a strategy session, but I just follow the show a little bit. And, I have a little mini course. If you're really intrigued by this, I tell you, get the book. And then if you get the book, I'll send you a letter on how to read the book properly. And then I have a little mini course on that we recorded with, just where I've kind of curated some of my interviews, some of the lessons I've taught, and then some of the other practitioners I've interviewed, just so that you can, I can, because there's a lot of stuff out, a lot of noise. Like, so I'm trying to streamline the noise, and, because you're off on some rabbit trail called YouTube, and then you're like, oh, this and Blossy banking, I want to get a line of credit. And no.
That's what the course is for. So make sure that you just follow through with the course so you don't have to.
And the book,
Like,
because, we're using the book. I mean, you want to learn how to do it, go to the source.
Yeah.
The source is Nelson. Even when I write my book's going to point to his book.
Well, when is your book coming out?
So
Accountability.
Second quarter, end of the second quarter. It should be the first draft. I should be ready to publish it by the end of June
2025?
2025.
2025.
So you should be available. I might actually have the first chapter out. If y'all follow me, I may have the first chapter I might put out in June.
That's perfect because this show is going to come out in June.
Oh, okay. So hit me up. It might be ready by this.
We'll make sure to put everything on the show notes. But Curtis, thank you so much for being on the Kaizen Blueprint podcast. It's been a pleasure. You're a very knowledgeable person, and it's great to have you.
Well, thanks. So it's, takes two to tango. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Kaizen Blueprint podcast. If you got value from today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. And don't forget to stay connected. Subscribe to our newsletter at kaizenblueprint.com for exclusive insights, resources, and updates. Keep striving for growth, take action, and remember, small, consistent improvements create massive impact. See you on the next episode. Peace out.